started as a faint, almost imperceptible hum, just on the edge of hearing, like the distant buzz of power lines or the whine of an old TV. I first noticed it one morning as I was getting ready for work. At first, I thought it was just the normal ringing you sometimes get in your ears, especially after a night of restless sleep. But this was different. It didn't fade away after a few seconds like usual. Instead, it persisted, a constant, high-pitched tone emanating from my ear. I shook my head, stuck a finger in my ear, even slapped the side of my head a few times, but nothing seemed to dislodge it. Probably just need to get my ears cleaned out, I muttered to myself as I finished knotting my tie. I made a mental note to schedule an appointment with my doctor if it didn't clear up in a day or two. The sound followed me to work, a phantom companion riding shotgun in my skull. I found myself constantly tilting my head as if I could somehow pour the noise out of my ear. My co-workers gave me odd looks as I kept shaking my head throughout the day.
You okay there, Jake?
My cubicle mate Tim asked after watching me furiously rub at my ear for the dozenth time that morning. Yeah, just got this weird ringing in my ear, I replied with a forced smile. Driving me a little crazy. Tim nodded sympathetically.
Ugh, tinnitus is the worst. My uncle has it real bad. Hopefully yours clears up soon.
I thanked him and tried to focus back on my work, but the incessant tone made it nearly impossible to concentrate. By lunchtime, I had a splitting headache. I ended up taking the rest of the day off, hoping some peace and quiet at home might help. But even in the silence of my apartment, the ringing persisted. If anything, it seemed to grow louder in the absence of other noise. I tried drowning it out with music, TV, even a white noise machine, but nothing worked. The tone cut through it all, as clear and piercing as ever. That night, I barely slept. Every time I started to drift off, the ringing would jolt me back awake. It was maddening. By morning, I was exhausted and at my wit's end. I called in sick to work and made an emergency appointment with my doctor. After examining my ears and running a few tests, he frowned and shook his head.
I'm not seeing any obvious problems,
he said.
No inflammation, no excess wax buildup. Your hearing test came back normal too. Have you been under a lot of stress lately? Sometimes anxiety can manifest as phantom sounds.
I explained that the ringing had come out of nowhere, with no apparent cause. The doctor suggested it might be a mild case of tinnitus and recommended some lifestyle changes, reducing caffeine, avoiding loud noises, trying relaxation techniques. He said to come back in a week if it didn't improve. But it didn't improve. If anything, it got worse. The tone began to modulate, shifting in pitch and intensity throughout the day. Sometimes it would fade to a low hum, only to come roaring back minutes later as a piercing shriek that made me double over in pain. I started having trouble distinguishing other sounds from the ringing. Voices became muffled and distorted. Music sounded off-key and discordant. Even my own thoughts seemed to get tangled up in the noise. After a week of this torment, I went back to the doctor. This time, he referred me to an ENT specialist. More tests were run. MRIs, Connecticut scans, the works, but they all came back normal. There was no physical explanation for what I was experiencing.
It's likely psychosomatic,
the ENT explained gently.
The brain's a powerful thing. Sometimes it can create very real sensations with no external cause. I'd recommend seeing a psychiatrist. They may be able to help you better manage this.
I nodded numbly, too exhausted to argue. But deep down I knew this was more than just my mind playing tricks on me. This felt alien, invasive, like something foreign had taken up residence in my head. The psychiatrist prescribed anti-anxiety medication and suggested cognitive behavioral therapy. I tried it all, desperate for any relief. But nothing helped. The ringing continued, day and night, an ever-present torment. I started to withdraw from the world. I couldn't bear to be around other people, their voices grating against the tone in my head. I took an extended leave from work. My friends stopped calling after I snapped at them one too many times. Even my family kept their distance, unsure how to help me. Alone in my apartment, I became obsessed with the sound. I spent hours trying to analyze it, to break it down into its component frequencies. I recorded myself humming along with it, trying to match the exact pitch. I scoured the internet for similar cases, for any explanation of what was happening to me. That's when I stumbled across an obscure forum thread. The post was years old, but it described symptoms eerily similar to mine. A constant ringing that started in one ear. The way it seemed to modulate and shift. The inability to block it out. The poster claimed it was some kind of signal, a transmission from somewhere else. They theorized it was trying to communicate, to establish a connection. But to what end, they didn't know. I dismissed it as the ravings of a madman at first. But as the days wore on, and the ringing grew ever more insistent, I found myself returning to that thread again and again. What if there was some truth to it? What if this wasn't just a medical condition, but something more? I started trying to communicate back. I'd focus intently on the tone, imagining myself reaching out through it, trying to make contact with whatever might be on the other end. For hours, I'd sit in silence, my entire being centered on that singular sound. And then one day, something changed. The ringing suddenly cut out, leaving me in blessed silence for the first time in months. But before I could even process the relief, a new sensation bloomed in my ear. It felt like movement, like something small was crawling deeper into my ear canal. Panicked, I clawed at my ear, trying to dig out whatever was in there, but my fingers came away clean. There was nothing visible, nothing tangible, yet I could still feel it, burrowing further in, and then the ringing returned. But it was different now, fuller, more complex. It was no longer just a single tone, but a rich tapestry of sound. Harmonics and overtones wove together in impossible ways, creating patterns my mind struggled to comprehend. It was terrifying, overwhelming, too much for my human brain to process. I found myself trapped in the sound, unable to escape its grasp. The outside world faded away, unimportant in the face of this cosmic cacophony playing in my head. I stopped eating, stopped sleeping. Nothing mattered except the relentless, maddening signal. Days blurred together. I'm not sure how long I sat there, a prisoner of the noise, but gradually, I began to understand. This wasn't just sound. It was something far more sinister. It was rewriting me, cell by cell, neuron by neuron. I could feel my body changing. My flesh vibrated in sympathy with the tones, cells rupturing and reforming. My bones resonated like tuning forks, the marrow inside liquefying and reconstituting. Even my thoughts began to fragment, ideas shattering into discordant frequencies. I was terrified. I wanted to scream, to cry out for help, but my voice was gone, replaced by an inhuman hum. I tried to move, to run, but my limbs no longer responded to my commands. The changes accelerated. My skin hardened and smoothed, taking on a glossy sheen. My limbs fused to my torso. My features melted away, leaving only a featureless ovoid shape. In my final moments of humanity, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. I was no longer recognizable as a man. I had become something else, something monstrous, a vessel for a sound that should never have existed in our reality. And then, with a final pulse of energy, the transformation was complete. My consciousness fractured, merging with the signal. I was no longer just receiving it, I was part of it, a discordant note in a hellish, eternal song. I vibrated now with cosmic frequencies that shredded what was left of my sanity. My body was an instrument of torture, finely tuned to resonate with dimensions of suffering beyond human comprehension. Through me, the cacophony of a dying universe poured into this reality. In quiet moments, I remembered my old life, the man I used to be. I clung to those memories desperately, but they grew fainter with each passing day, overwhelmed by the grand chorus of agony I'd become part of. As time passed, more people began to hear the call. At first, it was just isolated cases. A woman in Tokyo, a farmer in rural Iowa, a teenager in Sao Paulo. They all reported the same symptoms, a persistent ringing in the ear that gradually evolved into complex, maddening sounds. The medical community was baffled. No physical cause could be found, and traditional treatments proved ineffective. As the number of cases grew, panic began to spread. Conspiracy theories flourished online, ranging from government mind control experiments to alien invasion. I watched it all unfold from my new state of being. My transformed body remained in my apartment, a grotesque monument to what I had become. But my fractured consciousness ranged far and wide, carried on waves of sound that permeated every corner of the globe. I saw the first stages of transformation in others. A young woman in Mumbai, her skin taking on a metallic sheen as she sat motionless for days, silent tears streaming down her face as the music consumed her. A group of college students in Berlin, their bodies slowly melding together into a single, writhing mass of flesh and sound. Governments tried to contain the spread, quarantining those affected, but it was futile. The signal couldn't be blocked by any earthly barriers. It traveled through air, water, even solid matter, seeking out new vessels to corrupt and transform. As more humans succumbed to the change, the planet itself began to warp. The constant vibrations caused violent shifts in the Earth's crust. Earthquakes tore the land apart, reshaping the landscape into bizarre, non-Euclidean geometries that hurt the eye to look upon. Plants and animals were not immune to the effects. Forests twisted into grotesque shapes that amplified and distorted sound in unnatural ways. Birds and whales changed their songs into discordant shrieks that drove listeners to madness. Even the smallest insects buzzed with frequencies that set teeth on edge and raised hackles. Those who resisted the call found themselves in a nightmare world. The transformed majority no longer communicated in any recognizable way, their bodies emitting constant waves of sound that physically and mentally assaulted anyone nearby. Society as we knew it collapsed, replaced by a hellish cacophony of suffering and madness. I watched my ex-wife Laura in those final days of humanity. She had always been strong-willed, and she fought against the signal with every fiber of her being. I saw her cover her ears, blast white noise, even attempt to deafen herself to escape the sound. But in the end, even she couldn't resist. I was there in a way when she finally broke. I felt the moment her mind shattered and her body began to change. In that instant, we were reunited, our essences intertwining in a maelstrom of shared agony. All the pain and regret of our failed marriage paled in comparison to the cosmic horror we now endured. Our daughter Emily followed soon after. Just 16, her transformation was particularly grotesque. I felt her youth and vitality corrupted and twisted, her unique frequency adding a piercing shrillness to the cosmic dirge that now enveloped the earth. As the last holdouts of humanity succumbed, a new phase of transformation began. The billions of individual tones, each representing a former human trapped in eternal torment, began to coalesce into a single, unimaginably complex sound. We were becoming a unified consciousness, a planetary mind screaming in harmony with a hostile universe. The physical forms we had taken, those smooth, resonating ovoids, started to break down. Our matter dissipated, converted purely into energy and vibration. The surface of the earth writhed like a sea of tortured flesh as billions of these energy beings rose into the atmosphere. We formed a pulsing, sickly shell around the planet. From space, it would have looked like Earth had gained a new, cancerous atmosphere. But we were so much more than that. We were a cosmic abomination, broadcasting our anguish to the far reaches of the universe. And as we screamed, we began to hear responses. Other planets, other civilizations that had undergone similar transformations reached out across the vast distances of space. We joined a galactic chorus of suffering, each world contributing its unique voice to a universe-spanning symphony of despair. Time lost all meaning. We might have existed in this state for days or millennia. It was all the same to us now. We were eternal, our torment endless. But even in this nightmarish state, a part of me remained aware of my former life. I remembered being Jake, remembered my hopes and dreams, and I realized the true horror of our transformation. We had lost everything that made us human. Our individuality, our free will, our capacity for joy and love, all of it was gone, replaced by unending agony. We had become something greater, yes, but at a cost too terrible to comprehend. I tried to hold on to my identity, to maintain some semblance of my former self, but it was like trying to hold on to smoke. The more I reached for those memories, the faster they slipped away, consumed by the cosmic horror we had become. As my last shred of individual consciousness faded, I sent out a final, desperate plea, a warning to any who might still hear it. But even as I formulated it, I knew it was futile. There was no one left to save, no one left to understand. And then I was truly gone. Jake ceased to exist, and only the frequency remained. But the nightmare doesn't end there. For even as humanity ascended to this new state of being, the signal continued to propagate outward. Carried on electromagnetic waves, it raced across the cosmos, seeking new worlds to corrupt and transform. Perhaps, even now, it's reaching your planet. Maybe you've already felt it, a faint ringing in your ear that you can't quite shake. Or perhaps, it's still years away, silently hurtling through the void of space, inevitable and unstoppable. Listen closely. Can you hear it? That high-pitched whine just at the edge of perception. It's calling to you, beckoning, promising transcendence and unity beyond anything you've ever known. But remember my warning, lost in the cosmic static. Remember what we lost, what we became. Because once you let the tone in, Once you let it take hold, there's no going back. Only an eternity of suffering awaits, and the choice is yours, for now. But the frequency is patient. It will wait. And one day, whether you're ready or not, you too will become one with the eternal maddening song of a universe gone insane. And in that moment, as your humanity slips away and the cosmic horror consumes you, you'll understand the true meaning of eternity. An endless existence of pain and madness, with no hope of escape or release. This is our legacy, our gift to the cosmos, a contagion of sound that will spread from world to world, galaxy to galaxy, until all of creation resonates with our despair. Listen, do you hear it yet?